What if I told you that getting mad at a man is the least effective way to change his behavior, and that there's something far more powerful, something that works almost instantly? Most women think expressing frustration, raising their voice, or laying out everything he's doing wrong will finally get him to understand. But it rarely does. In fact, it usually pushes him further away, shuts him down, or makes him defensive. But when you stop reacting and start responding with calm, clarity, and confidence, everything changes. Instead of trying to win, imagine connecting. Instead of criticizing, imagine inspiring him to step up. Not through anger, but through a few key shifts that completely flip the dynamic. Speak to the man he wants to be. Validate progress, not perfection. Communicate like someone who values peace over drama. And if he still doesn't rise, don't explode. Elevate. Walk away not in rage, but in radiant self-worth. This isn't about manipulation, it's about power. Quiet, feminine, unshakable power. The kind that makes a man look at you and say, I can't lose her. Want to know what to do instead of getting mad? Let me show you, and watch how fast he changes. You ever find yourself getting so frustrated with a guy that you just want to scream? You've been patient, you've dropped hints, maybe even had full-blown conversations, and still, he does that one thing again. Or worse, he doesn't do the thing you've been hoping he would do. And in that moment, everything in you wants to react. You want to get mad, you want to call it out, you want him get it right now because it feels personal. It feels like he's not hearing you or not valuing you or just doesn't care. But here's what I want you to remember in that moment. Getting mad may feel justified, but it's not going to get you the change you want. What creates change in people, real, lasting, behavior-shifting change, isn't anger. It's curiosity. Because when you react from a place of frustration, his defenses go up. He stops listening. He starts protecting. And now you're not two people solving something together. You're two people fighting for ground. But when you replace reaction with curiosity, everything shifts. You stay in your power, and more importantly, you give him the space to reflect rather than defend. Let me give you an example. Let's say he forgot to check in with you when he said he would. You've been waiting. It's late. You're annoyed, maybe even hurt. The instinct might be to say something like, really? You couldn't be bothered to text me. Now, I get it. It feels true. But what happens in his mind? He hears blame. He feels cornered. And most likely he'll either shut down or get defensive and nothing changes. But what if instead you approached it from a different angle? What if you said, hey, I noticed you didn't reach out tonight like you said you would. Is everything okay? That simple question coming from a grounded place does two powerful things. It expresses awareness and it opens a door for honesty. It shows him you care, but you're not there to attack. And that's when the truth comes out. Maybe he lost track of time, maybe something came up, or maybe he's going to realize he dropped the ball. But the key is you gave him the space to own it. You stayed in control of yourself. That's powerful. See, when you get mad at a man, what you're often doing without meaning to is trying to force a change. You're trying to use intensity to create awareness. But people don't respond to pressure, they respond to perspective. And curiosity gives them that perspective. It says, I'm not here to punish you, I'm here to understand, but I'm also paying attention. And believe me, when a man sees that you're calm, clear, and still completely grounded in your standards, that hits way deeper than yelling ever could. There's also something incredibly attractive about a woman who can stay in her emotional center, who can observe without spiraling, who can communicate without blaming. That doesn't mean you suppress how you feel. No, your feelings are valid, but your delivery determines whether your truth creates progress or just more chaos. And men feel that difference. One version says, I need you to change or I'll lose it. The other says, I trust myself enough to know how to handle this no matter what you do. That's the energy that makes him sit up and pay attention. Here's another way to look at it. Think of a time someone approached you with frustration. Maybe it was a friend, a parent, a boss. And instead of asking you what was going on, they just launched into why you were wrong. Did that make you want to change? Or did it make you want to pull away, justify yourself, or just mentally check out? Exactly. We're all human. And when we feel judged, we shut down. But when we feel understood, even slightly, we open up. We drop our armor and we become capable of growth. So the next time you feel the urge to react, ask yourself this instead. What might be going on for him right now? That question doesn't excuse bad behavior. It just gives you a clearer lens through which to see it. And from that clarity, you can make stronger decisions. You can ask better questions. And you can speak in a way that lands. Because it's not coming from chaos. It's coming from confidence. It's amazing how fast people change when they feel safe, seen, and challenged all at once. That's what curiosity does. It keeps you connected to your standards without losing connection to the other person. And when a man experiences that, that's when real change happens, instantly. Because it wasn't about controlling him. It was about controlling the energy that made him want to be better. When you're upset with a man, whether he forgot something important, didn't show up the way you needed, or said something that hurt, your instinct might be to react. Maybe you raise your voice. Maybe you shut down. Maybe you fire off a passive-aggressive comment, hoping he'll finally get the point. But here's the truth. Emotional explosions rarely bring emotional connection. They might grab his attention in the moment, but they rarely inspire the kind of lasting change you're really looking for. See, when a man feels like he's being attacked, even if you're completely justified in your frustration, his default response is usually one of two things. He either gets defensive or he checks out. And once that switch flips, he's not listening anymore. He's not trying to understand how you feel. He's trying to survive the conversation. He's now in self-protection mode. And in that space, nothing gets resolved. Not really. So instead of going in guns blazing, I want you to try something that might feel counterintuitive at first. Stay calm and get clear. Take a breath, step back, and speak to the heart of the issue without letting emotion hijack your message. This doesn't mean you suppress what you feel. It means you channel it in a way that gets heard. Let me give you an example. Let's say you had plans and that he shows up late again. You're annoyed, maybe even hurt. Instead of saying, you're always late, you clearly don't care about my time, which triggers defensiveness, try this. When you show up late without letting me know, it makes me feel like my time isn't important to you. I know that might not be your intention, but that's how it lands with me. What you've just done is incredibly powerful. You've taken ownership of your feeling while still being direct about what's not okay. You didn't accuse, you didn't generalize, you didn't bring in the last 6 times he's done it. You simply communicated the impact of his actions in a tone he can actually receive. Men respond best to clarity, not chaos. When you bring calm to a difficult moment, you create space for connection. You allow him the opportunity to actually reflect on his behavior instead of spending his energy defending himself. That's when the magic happens. When you can speak your truth in a way that doesn't feel like a punch, but still lands with weight. Now, this isn't about walking on eggshells. This is about emotional maturity. It's about choosing effectiveness over drama. There's a difference between expressing emotion and letting emotion control the entire conversation. You can be honest and real without being harsh. It's also important to remember men are often not as emotionally tuned in as you are. That's not a flaw, that's just wiring. So when you come at him with a tidal wave of feelings without giving him something tangible to hold on to, he gets lost. He hears emotion, but not the message. So give him the message. Give him something clear he can actually do differently next time. And when he does make that shift, even a small one, acknowledge it. Show him that his effort doesn't go unnoticed. That kind of feedback is fuel. It builds momentum. You don't have to yell to be powerful. You don't have to guilt trip to be heard. The most powerful women are the ones who can hold their ground with calm, who can communicate disappointment without destruction. That's not weakness. That's leadership in love. So the next time he drops the ball or forgets something that matters or says something careless, don't just react. Choose your tone like it's a tool. Keep it low but steady. Direct but not destructive. Let him see the standard, not the storm. Because when you stop trying to punish and start trying to be understood, something incredible happens. He starts wanting to understand you back. Most of us are quick to notice when someone gets something wrong, but we rarely take the time to acknowledge when they get something right. And yet this is one of the most powerful shifts you can make in your relationship, especially with a man. If you want lasting change, if you want him to show up differently, consistently, and willingly, you have to stop focusing solely on what he's doing wrong and start noticing what he's doing right. Noticing progress instead of expecting perfection. Here's the truth. Most men, just like women, want to feel respected, appreciated, and seen. But the way we often try to create change in someone is through critique. We think if we point out all the ways they're falling short, it will motivate them to rise. But what actually happens is the opposite. They shut down, they become defensive, they start to feel like they can never win. And when someone feels like they can never win, they stop trying. Now, I'm not saying you should tolerate behavior that hurts you or that you shouldn't set standards. You absolutely should. But there's a big difference between setting a standard and constantly pointing out where someone is failing to meet it. What if, instead, you shifted your energy to highlighting the effort, the progress, even the attempt? When a man feels like his effort is noticed, not just the result, he becomes more motivated to keep showing up for you. Think about it. Imagine you're trying to change something in yourself. Maybe it's eating healthier, showing up more consistently for people, whatever it is. And every time you try, someone says, yeah, but you still didn't do this, or, well, that's not enough. You start to feel like your effort doesn't count. You lose momentum, you feel defeated. It's no different for him. Let's say he's the kind of guy who's not naturally expressive. You've always felt like you wanted more emotional openness from him. Then one day, he opens up, maybe just a little. Maybe he shares something vulnerable, or he tells you about a stressful moment at work. Now, in that moment, you have a choice. You can say, see, why can't you be like this all the time? Or, took you long enough? Or, you can pause and say, I really appreciate you telling me that. It means a lot when you open up like this. That second response reinforces the behavior you want, not the one you're trying to erase. Because here's the thing, people are more likely to change when they feel safe to change, when they feel seen in their effort, not judged for their flaws. And I get it. Sometimes it's frustrating. You feel like you're putting in so much energy, doing so much emotional labor, and all you want is for him to finally get it. But real relationships aren't about waiting for someone to be perfect. They're about building something together, step by step. You don't have to lower your standards, but you do have to recognize that growth is messy. It doesn't always look like a perfect aha moment. Sometimes it looks like awkward progress, like someone trying and falling short, then trying again. And when you reward the trying, that's when it starts to stick. There's something magnetic about being with someone who notices the good in you. Not in a fake way, not with empty praise, but with genuine recognition. When someone says, I saw what you did there, that was thoughtful, that meant a lot, it builds a bridge. It creates momentum. And over time, that momentum becomes real transformation. So the next time he does something even slightly closer to what you've been needing, whether that's showing up on time, being more emotionally present, planning something without you asking, pause. Acknowledge it, even if it feels small. Even if you wish he'd done it sooner. Give the moment a little oxygen. That acknowledgement is the fuel that encourages him to keep going. Because ultimately, we all become better when we feel we're growing in an environment that nurtures our effort, not one that constantly reminds us of our shortcomings. That's how you inspire change that actually lasts. Do you ever notice how sometimes the more you point out what a man is not doing, the more he retreats? It's almost like the more you push, the more he pulls away. And it's frustrating, right? Because you're not coming from a bad place. You just want him to step up, to show up, to meet you in the relationship. But here's the twist. The more we focus on what a man is lacking, the less likely he is to change. The less likely he is to change. Not because he doesn't care, not because he isn't capable, but because when we constantly highlight where he's falling short, we're not speaking to the best in him. We're speaking to the part of him that already doubts himself, and that part shuts down, not up. You want to create change? Here's what works. Start speaking to the version of him he wants to be. Every man, just like every woman, has a vision of the kind of person he hopes to become. A better communicator, a better partner, someone more present, more intentional, more loving. And deep down, he knows when he's not living up to that. He already feels that tension inside, the guilt, the inadequacy. But when you come at him with criticism, it confirms his worst fears about himself. And when he feels judged, he doesn't transform. He protects himself, he gets defensive, or worse, he disconnects entirely. But here's the powerful part. When you reflect the potential you see in him, when you speak to who he could be, rather than punishing him for who he's not yet, you invite him to rise. You become a mirror for the man he aspires to be, not a reminder of who he's failing to be. Let me give you an example. Instead of saying, "You never listen," try, "I love it when you're fully present with me. I feel so safe and connected when you really hear me." That one shift does two things. First, it tells him what behavior you're actually craving without accusation. And second, it shows him how good it feels when he does it. You're creating a positive association with the change you want to see. And the best part? Most men want to be the hero in the story. They want to feel like they're winning with you, that what they do matters, that they can make you happy. And when you make that role feel possible instead of impossible, they lean in, not because they're being manipulated, but because they want to show up for the woman who believes in them. This doesn't mean ignoring bad behavior. This doesn't mean tolerating being hurt or overlooked. It means that when you choose to express a boundary or a desire, you do it in a way that inspires action instead of defensiveness. You stop fighting for control and you start leading with influence. And there's a big difference. See, influence happens when someone wants to change for themselves. When you become the reminder of what's possible instead of the critic of what's missing, he no longer changes out of fear, he changes out of inspiration. That's where real transformation happens. Now, this takes strength. It takes self-control. Because when you're hurt, when you feel let down, the instinct is to lash out or shut down. But if you can stay grounded, if you can express yourself from a place of hope rather than resentment, you give him the greatest gift. You invite him into a better version of himself. And here's the truth. If he's the right man, he won't take that invitation for granted. He'll rise. He'll stretch. He'll evolve. Not perfectly, not instantly, but consistently. And if he doesn't, if he resists, if he refuses to meet you even halfway, then you'll know you didn't lose him, you just revealed him. So speak to the man he wants to be, not the man you're afraid he is. That shift alone can change everything. If there's one thing we get wrong in relationships, especially when emotions are high, it's this. We start fighting to win instead of fighting to connect. And that one shift from connection to competition can unravel everything we're trying to build with someone. When you're mad at a man, when he's done something that hurt you, frustrated you, made you feel unseen, unheard, or even unimportant, the most tempting thing in the world is to go in guns blazing, to make your point, to prove why he's wrong and you're right, to force him to feel the weight of what he's done. But let me ask you this. What do you actually want in that moment? Do you want to win the argument? Or do you want him to get it? Because those are not always the same thing. Winning might feel good for a second, but connection, real understanding, is what creates change. See, when we go into attack mode, even if we're completely justified in what we feel, the natural human response from the other person is to defend. The walls go up. He might shut down, he might argue back, or worse, he might go emotionally numb. And what happens then? Nothing moves forward. You're still upset, but now he's either retreating or pushing back. You're still feeling all the same things, but now there's no space for resolution. You just entered a power struggle. And power struggles in relationships never lead to closeness, only distance. What's so powerful and honestly so disarming is when you choose connection in the moment, when most people choose control. When instead of coming from, I need to win this, you shift into, I want us to understand each other. That shift changes everything. Let's say he forgot something important to you. A dinner you had planned, something you mentioned earlier in the week that really mattered. The reaction we often default to is, how could you forget that? You don't even care. And boom, just like that, he's no longer thinking about how to make it right. He's thinking about how to survive the blame. But what if you said instead, it really hurt me when you forgot. I was excited about this and it felt like it didn't matter to you. You're still expressing your feelings, but you're doing it in a way that keeps the bridge between you standing. You're not cutting him down. You're inviting him to understand your world. And from that place, you give him the opportunity to step up. We have to remember, not every mistake is a character flaw. Sometimes it's a misstep, a blind spot, or even just a moment of being overwhelmed. But when we turn those moments into moral judgments, like you're selfish, you never think of anyone but yourself, you're just like every other guy, we turn the entire relationship into a trial where one person is always the defendant. And let's be honest, no one wants to feel like they're constantly on trial in their own relationship, especially someone who cares about you and wants to do better. If you can give them space to, the way you bring things up matters just as much as what you're bringing up. If your tone says, you're a disappointment, he will react from shame or defensiveness. If your tone says, this matters to me and I want us to be better, he will be far more likely to lean in instead of pull away. The goal in these moments is not to dominate, it's to reconnect, to remind him and yourself that you're on the same team, that this is not about him losing and you winning. It's about both of you understanding each other better so that the relationship wins. And it takes strength to lead with that mindset. It takes emotional maturity to say, I could yell right now, I could guilt trip him, I could hit him with sarcasm or silence, but instead, I'm going to speak my truth calmly and trust that if this man values me, he'll hear me. And if he doesn't, that tells you something deeper than any argument ever could. Because here's the truth. If a man cares and you speak to him from a place of connection, not blame, not ego, but honest connection, he will want to make it right. He may not do it perfectly, but he'll try. And if he doesn't even try, when you've given him the emotional safety to do so, that's not your fault. And it's not your job to fight harder. It's your cue to protect your peace. So the next time you feel that fire rising, the next time your instinct is to prove your point or punish him for what he didn't do, pause, breathe, ask yourself, do I want to win or do I want us to grow? Because when you choose connection over control, you stop playing a short-term game and you start building something that actually lasts. That's how you change everything. Sometimes the most powerful message you can send a man is not in what you say, it's in what you're willing to walk away from. When you've communicated your needs clearly, when you've shown up with honesty and kindness, when you've made space for understanding and connection, and still he doesn't rise to meet you, you don't need to yell, cry, or prove your worth. You simply step back with grace. This isn't about being cold or playing games. It's not about punishing him or withdrawing love to manipulate his behavior. It's about sending a quiet, unshakable message. I value myself enough not to stay where I'm not seen, heard, or valued in return. That kind of self-respect, it speaks volumes, louder than anger ever could. Here's the truth. Men don't change when you shout louder. They don't grow because you beg them to. They grow when they're inspired. And sometimes the most inspiring thing in the world is a woman who shows she's not afraid to walk away from anything that doesn't align with the love she knows she deserves. See, when a man knows that no matter how badly he shows up, you'll always be there, there's no real urgency for him to evolve. He doesn't have to step up because there's no risk of losing you. But when you show calmly, confidently, that you have standards, that you're not here to babysit someone's potential, but to be met by it, that's when things start to shift. It's not dramatic, you don't storm out, you don't throw around ultimatums. It's in the way you stop over-explaining. It's the way you start creating space for yourself instead of fighting for space in his world. You redirect your energy away from trying to get him to understand and toward living a life that fulfills you. That's what changes the energy in the dynamic. And here's what usually happens. Suddenly, he notices the silence, not because you're being passive-aggressive, but because you're no longer fighting for a connection that's one-sided. That silence creates a vacuum. And in that vacuum, a man has a choice. He can rise into it, meet your energy, and show you that he's willing to grow, or he can fall away. And if he falls away, it was never your job to hold him up in the first place. So many people think that walking away is weakness, but it's actually strength because it means you're choosing peace over chaos, dignity over desperation. You're no longer chasing emotional crumbs or trying to prove your worth to someone who isn't showing up fully. You're making a decision, not out of anger, but out of alignment with your self-worth. And here's what makes it even more powerful. When you walk away with grace, not drama, you don't close the door out of spite. You simply stop standing in front of a door that refuses to open. And that gives him a chance to genuinely reflect, not from guilt, not from pressure, but from the realization that he may lose something rare, a woman who sees him, supports him, and believes in him, but refuses to shrink herself to keep him comfortable. That's when transformation can happen. Not always. Not every man will rise, but the ones who are capable of growth, the ones who want to be better, often need that wake-up call. They need to feel what it's like to miss you, to recognize the void your absence creates. Because when you're always available, emotionally, physically, mentally, it becomes easy for him to take your presence for granted. So the next time you're tempted to explode, to send that angry text, to fight for his attention, pause. Ask yourself, is this the moment to speak, or is this the moment to step back? And if you've already said what needed to be said, if you've already shown up with love and clarity, maybe it's not about doing more. Maybe it's about doing less. Maybe it's about choosing yourself and letting the silence speak. Because a man who truly values you will notice the shift. He'll feel the distance. And if he's capable of change, he'll come forward, not because you forced him, but because your grace reminded him of what's at stake. You change a man by getting mad at him. You change a man by showing him who you are and what you'll no longer accept.